You weren't supposed to hear this. This story was buried, sealed in whispers, dismissed as folklore, and then methodically erased from the medical record. Not because it wasn't true, but because it was too true, too revealing, too close to something dark, ancient, and unspeakable. A truth that rattled the very bones of a society obsessed with hiding its rot under a polished surface. It begins in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, 1873, in a German quarter where the chimneys of the breweries never stopped exhaling, and where secrets didn't stay secret for long. A pale child sat in the window of a modest wooden house, watching, not playing, not dreaming, watching, and counting. Her name was Emma Richter. She was 11 years old, and she saw things you weren't meant to see. She knew, before anyone else, that Johann Dietrich would die. Not just die, but collapse at exactly 14 minutes past 2 in the malt room of the Kellner Brewery. His coworkers thought it was fate. The doctor blamed alcohol, but Emma, she blamed math. A pattern, a simple shift in numbers. Consumption plus gait change divided by caloric intake multiplied by stress. Her prediction wasn't a guess. It was a formula, a quiet, icy calculation from child who could break a man's life down to data points. And she was right, down to the second. Now ask yourself, what kind of mind does that? What kind of child sees the hidden machinery of life and death turning beneath reality like cogs in a cruel machine? Emma Richter wasn't special because she was smart. She was dangerous because she was exact, emotionless, clinical, unflinching, and she didn't stop with Dietrich. In the weeks that followed, she would expose affairs, thefts, hidden pregnancies, things that no child could possibly know, things that adults worked hard to bury. But Emma unearthed them with her little notebook and her icy eyes. She didn't reveal them out of cruelty. She revealed them because the numbers said it was time. By the time spring arrived, 3 people will be dead. 1 family would flee. The priest would renounce his sermons, and Emma would vanish. But before she disappeared, she wrote it all down. In a leather journal no one dared to decode. And you're about to read between the numbers. What if I told you there's a language beneath language? A tongue that doesn't use words, but weight, pulse, gait, routine, the angle of your shoes after you take them off, the twitch under your left eye when you lie, the number of seconds you hesitate before answering question. This was Emma Richter's language. The language of flesh and fire, pattern and silence. The town called her strange, possessed, a curiosity at first. But what they didn't understand was this. Emma wasn't watching them for amusement. She was mapping them, charting their decline, logging every human soul around her like an alchemist counting impurities in gold. She could tell when a man was about to betray his wife, not by catching him, but by observing his gait, the time he left his house, the slope of his shoulders when he returned. She knew when a woman was stealing bread, not from her hands, but from the change in her heartbeat after communion. To Emma, Schneider took 37 more steps than she normally did, always returned with particles of soil under her fingernails, and wore gloves when the temperature was above 70 degrees. Emma calculated the trajectory. She said it was either a buried sin or a buried body. When they dug there 6 months later, they found both. You see, Emma wasn't supernatural. She wasn't mystical. She was worse. She was rational in a way that defied comfort. She could unmask your darkest truth using the logic you worship, the reason you trust, the arithmetic you built your entire society upon. That's why they feared her. Not because she was wrong, but because she was terrifyingly, surgically right. And deep in her journal, she had begun something new, a pattern she hadn't finished, a sequence she hadn't spoken aloud, a formula that didn't predict death. It predicted collapse. Collapse doesn't begin with fire. It begins with precision, with a shift so small that no one notices, except those who know where to look. Emma knew, and in early March of 1873, she began writing it down. She stopped documenting individual behavior and started tracking collective patterns, whole families, blocks, and brewery crews. She was seeing beyond people into systems. She drew it all. Symbols only she understood, distances between doors, the frequency of door slams, the rise and fall of chimney smoke, the sequence of footsteps during shift change, how often people spoke at dinner versus how often they chewed. She called it the rhythm before the break. And that break was coming. Emma told her mother one evening, without looking up from her notebook, there will be blood in 3 households by the end of April. It has already begun. Greta told her to hush. She prayed harder. But Emma didn't pray. She calculated. Mrs. Weber and Mr. Kellner's affair. Predicted to the minute. Mr. Weber's horse's limp. Noticed and timed across 11 days. The exact number of minutes it would take him to return home early. The convergence of 3 variables, she said, guaranteed a violent outcome. She was right. After the confrontation at the brewery, Kellner was beaten half to death. Anna Weber hospitalized. Mr. Weber arrested. The neighborhood was rocked, not by the scandal, but by the realization that Emma had mapped it all out before it happened. And then came fear. Not awe, not wonder. Fear. Because now the people of the German quarter weren't just worried about their sins being revealed. They were terrified that the girl might know their fate. Emma Richter had stopped being a child. She had become something else. The priest avoided her. The physician grew curious. The neighbors whispered about demons, about possession, about that girl with the gray eyes. Some believed she was reading minds. Others swore she was an omen of God's wrath. But no one was asking the right question. What if Emma wasn't the threat? What if she was the warning? Because inside her leather journal, a new page had appeared. Unlike the others, it wasn't just numbers. It was a map, lined with black XS, dated, timed, marked in red ink. And one by one, those XS were beginning to move. Red ink. In 1873, red ink was expensive, reserved for ledgers, contracts, and the kind of documents men swore oaths over. Emma didn't ask for it. She stole it, quietly, from her father's brewery records. Her first act of rebellion. She used it to draw XS, each one carefully measured. Not randomly placed, not dramatic. Just an X, just a date, just a time. The first appeared on March 11th, over the Kellner Brewery. And on March 12th, the scandal broke. The second was stamped across the Schneider residence. No one knew why, until March 19th, when Mrs. Schneider was pulled from the river with a broken wrist and a bottle of laudanum still in her skirt pocket. The third was placed over St. Anselm's Parish, a church, a sanctuary. But Emma had seen the tremor in Father Collar's hands, the hesitation when he passed certain homes, the pattern of his Sunday visits, where he stayed too long behind certain closed doors. On March 26th, the priest stopped preaching. He disappeared without a word. No sermons, no farewells, just gone. And still, no one dared confront Emma. Because the deeper fear wasn't what she knew. It was what she might tell. Each red X was a sentence. Not a prophecy, not a curse, but a cold verdict of consequence. Not what might happen, but what will. She never explained them, never warned the marked. She simply documented, dispassionately, as if recording the results of a dying experiment. Her father burned the first 3 pages. He thought he was protecting her. But by the next morning, Emma had rewritten them all from memory. Every number, every angle, every damn X. Heinrich realized it then. This wasn't about what she saw. It was about what she understood. And what she understood was system failure. Patterns in people revealed patterns in power. Brewing crews, clergy hierarchies, marital alignments. Emma wasn't looking at individuals anymore. She was tracking the rot in the foundation. And what happens when the foundation cracks? Collapse. Not of people, but of trust, of order, of the illusion of safety that institutions were like perfume. The leather journal was growing heavier, denser, saturated with dates yet to arrive. Emma was no longer predicting behavior. She was forecasting implosion. And when the red XS was over their own home. The Richter home was marked on April 4th. A red X, smaller than the others, but centered perfectly over their kitchen. The same kitchen where Emma sat each morning, counting footsteps and measuring silence like most children would measure teaspoons of sugar. Greta begged her to erase it. She cried, not like a mother in grief, but like someone who's just been told her life was already over. Heinrich didn't speak. He just stared at the red mark and wondered. Was the X predicting death? Or exile? Or something worse? Emma wouldn't say. She merely pointed to the numbers. There's a 92% chance of displacement, she said flatly. Higher if the priest doesn't return. Higher still if the next death happens before the 20th. Displacement. Not death. But in 1873, for an immigrant family clinging to the bottom rung of stability, displacement was its own kind of grave. The neighborhood had turned on them. Children were yanked away when they passed by. Doors were locked faster when Greta came to shop. The whispers had turned into declarations. One man, Otto Krantz, spit in Hinrich's path as he walked to work. Tell your witch daughter to stop watching my wife. That night, their windows were broken. No one came to fix them. No one said who did it. They didn't need to. Emma already knew. She had recorded the angle of the stones, the velocity, the shoe prints outside the sill. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She simply wrote, Otto, 3:16 a.m., probable motive, infidelity exposure. Risk high. Retaliation window, 72 hours. 3 days later, Otto Krantz was arrested after beating his wife unconscious. The evidence? A note slipped anonymously into the sheriff's office with precise dates, times, and behaviors documented in an unnerving hand. The ink, red. The town was boiling now, not because Emma was wrong, but because she wasn't. She had become the living embodiment of consequence, a silent sentence following everyone who thought they could sin without price. And the system, the old, creaking machinery of their world, religion, work, marriage, obedience, was straining under her gaze. The town wanted her silenced. Not questioned. Not corrected. Silenced. The priest was gone. The doctor was watching. And Emma Richter was being studied by forces she hadn't yet written down. But soon would. Because the next X in her book wasn't for a person. It was for the entire block. April 9th, 1873. A quiet fog settled over the German quarter like an omen. Thick, heavy, too early in the season. The kind of fog that blurs edges, not just of sight, but of memory. People would later say they barely remember the day, just that it felt wrong. Emma woke early, earlier than usual. She had not slept much, not out of fear, but preparation. She made tea. She placed her notebook on the table. She sharpened her pencil 3 times. Her red ink was already open. She turned to the page labeled Block E. It included 7 homes, 2 alleyways, and the northeast corner of the Kellner Brewery. Names were listed: Schenk, Vollmer, House, Klein. Next to each name were notes, not emotional, just facts. Conflict ratio rising. Domestic tension peaked. Clergy interactions ceased. Emma had written it plainly. Block E will self-erode within 72 hours of Incident 3. What was Incident 3? She never said aloud. But at 2:41 p.m. that day, the Vollmer child, age 9, was found unconscious in the alley behind the bakery. Signs of blunt trauma. No one saw who did it. No one admitted what they'd heard. But Emma had. She had heard it hours before it happened. She had logged it before it existed. By sundown, the block had erupted. Accusations turned violent. Mr. Schenk attacked Mr. Klein in his yard with a brick. Mrs. House tried to hang herself in the attic, but was found in time. The baker refused to open the next morning. And within 48 hours, 5 families had packed wagons and left. No golonbis. No warnings. Emma watched it all from the window, notebook in lap, gray eyes unblinking. She didn't smile. She didn't cry. She merely wrote. Prediction held. That block never recovered. Some said it was cursed. Others swore they saw Emma walking its empty street that night, barefoot, tracing invisible symbols in the dirt with a stick. She denied it. But in her journal, a new symbol had appeared. A circle around Block E. Not an X. Not red. Black. Inside that black circle, she wrote, Phase 2 begins. What was Phase 2? Only one man knew. Dr. Friedrich Muller, the physician who had been quietly tracking Emma's calculations, copying her discarded notes, and writing letters. Letters to people outside Milwaukee. To men who wore black coats, spoke in clinical tongues, and arrived without names. Men who had read her numbers and understood what Emma Richter really was. They arrived just after midnight on April 17th. No fanfare, no badge, no wagon, just 3 men in dark wool coats, stepping out of fog that didn't seem to follow natural wind. Their hats were wide-brimmed, their collars high. One was tall and thin, another shorter and square-jawed, and the third, the one who spoke, wore gloves he never removed. They didn't knock. They waited. Heinrich answered the door half asleep, shirt unbuttoned, breathing thick with beer. He paused when he saw them. The speaker lifted a hand. Not threatening, not polite, just certain. "We're here for the girl," he said softly. "The one who maps behavior into collapse." Not a question, a statement. Greta stepped forward, instinctively shielding Emma, who was already behind her, notebook in hand, unreadable expression on her face. The man's eyes flicked down to the journal. "You've seen enough," he said to Greta. "You just don't know what it is." Emma tilted her head. "You're not doctors," she said calmly. "No," the gloved man replied. "We study the things that come before medicine, the patterns beneath the science." Heinrich snapped awake. "You can't take her." "We don't need to," the tall man finally spoke. "She's already one of us." Emma stepped forward, just slightly. "I wrote about you," she said, but the ink bled. "I couldn't fix the page." The men paused. The short one smiled faintly. "Then you already know what comes next." Greta screamed. She wasn't ready. She never had been. She grabbed Emma, tried to pull her back, but Emma stood still, too still. "This isn't about power," the gloved man whispered. "It's about pattern recognition. Systems too large for cities. Cycles too old for churches. You don't belong in that school, Emma." Emma opened a journal. On a page none of them could see, she had written something new. 3 shadows. All contained fragments. One lies. One observes. One remembers. She looked up. "You're early," she said. The men exchanged glances. "Your clock is fast," the observer said. Emma nodded. "Where your future is slow." And then they left. It didn't take her. They didn't stay. They simply walked away, into the night, into the fog, like they'd only come to confirm a prophecy. The next morning, the Richter home was silent. But the journal had a new entry. Test failed. They were not the first. The clock stopped on April 19th. Not just in the Richter house, across the entire east quarter of Milwaukee. 8 blocks, 30 homes, 3 churches, and 1 schoolroom. Every clock, dead at 3:14 a.m. Watches cracked. Pendulums froze mid-swing. Even the town hall's bell refused to chime at sunrise. No storm, no fire, no mechanical failure. Just silence, as if time itself had recoiled. Emma was already awake. She knew it would happen. She had told Greta 3 nights prior. When time stops, don't speak. Don't pray. Don't move. Greta hadn't believed her. Not fully. But when the stillness fell, she obeyed. They sat in the parlor, unmoving, as if the air had thickened to tar. Emma stared at the window, at nothing. And for 47 minutes, no bird sang, no wind blew, no voice dared speak a syllable. At exactly 4:01 a.m., the clocks restarted. Every one of them, except for the watch hidden in Emma's drawer, the one that had belonged to her brother before he died. It ticked backward. When Greta checked on her daughter later that morning, Emma was lying on the rug, eyes open, not blinking. Her notebook was clutched to her chest, its pages soaked in red ink. She wasn't injured, but she wouldn't speak. For days. The doctor came. Not Dr. Muller. He was gone. The new man didn't give a name. He carried no bag. He didn't ask questions. He only examined Emma's hands and her left eye, which had changed color, from gray to near black. He whispered something Greta couldn't hear and left without a word. But that night, Emma wrote again. She wrote about a fracture. Not a bone. Of time. A temporal skip, the entry read. Uncalculated, but not unpredictable. 14 minutes were erased. 7 were overwritten. 1 minute is still loose. A minute that didn't belong anywhere. She called it the broken time, and she began mapping the people who had been awake during that minute. Those who had moved when they shouldn't, who had thought things no one should have been able to think. She circled 6 names. 5 would die in the next month. 1, a man named Elias Weir, would disappear entirely. No body, no trace, no memory. His own wife claimed he never existed. But Emma remembered. She had seen him after the broken time, standing outside her window, smiling. The note was folded precisely as if pressed between glass. Greta found it tucked beneath Emma's mattress on April 23rd, the day the candle reversed. It read only, "Light has memory. Fire does not forget. Don't speak during the reversal." At first, Greta thought it was poetry, the kind of eerie language Emma had begun using more often. But that night, just past 11 p.m., the air in the house changed. Thicker, pressurized, the same way it had felt the night the clock stopped. Emma stood by the mantel, notebook in hand, one lone candle lit beside her. Greta started to speak, to ask what she was doing, but Emma held up one finger. Silence. And then it began. The flame, slow at first, started to elongate. It did not rise toward the ceiling like normal. It bent down, unnaturally, against gravity, stretching along the candle's length and beginning to burn upward toward the wax it had already consumed. The wax unmelted. The wick reformed. The flame was rewinding. Greta gasped, and instantly the room shook. Emma didn't flinch. She scribbled in the notebook with red ink, her eyes locked on the flame, moving backward through time. She was watching not light, but memory, tracing it, decoding it. The shaking intensified. From beneath the floorboards came a sound, a groan, deep and almost human, as if something buried was waking up. Greta stumbled back, clutching her crucifix, whispering prayers. The flame, still burning in reverse, began to flicker violently. And then, all at once, it vanished. Not snuffed, unlit. The wick was whole, the candle untouched. And yet Emma's journal now bore a new entry. 3:17, March 12th, Father lied about the river. Greta froze. Emma had never mentioned that day, never spoken of her father's last trip to the Kinnickinnic River, the day he returned pale, soaking wet, eyes too wide, hands trembling. She had never told Emma what he confessed to Greta that night, whispering in the dark like a madman. Now Emma knew. Somehow, she had retrieved the moment, unburned it from time itself. Later, when Greta asked her how, Emma only said, "The candle remembers everything the mouth forgets." And beneath that sentence, barely legible in the corner, they lit one backward in Prague. 3 people disappeared. They found the wall behind Emma's bed on the morning of April 26th. Not found, noticed. It had always been there, but no one had truly seen it. That morning, light struck it differently. Just right. And beneath the peeling wallpaper, behind the cracked plaster, were lines, faint at first, then unmistakable, drawn in pencil, then ink, then something darker. A map, not of streets, not of buildings, but of voices. Each line was a thread, a current, a frequency, marked with words like, "Guilt echoes here." She speaks to herself in 3 tones. This one repeats the name of the dead when she sleeps. And beside every note was a date and time, always between 2 and 4 a.m. The hours no one admitted to remembering. Emma had been mapping the whispers, not the ones she heard with ears, the ones that spoke through the room, the murmurs that clung to the fabric of silence. She had tracked them for months, tracing patterns, calculating their recurrence, drawing circles where the voices overlapped, forming a web of haunted memory. At the very center of that web, the name, written not once, but 34 times. Overwritten, scribbled, crossed out, rewritten again. Only one letter was clear, E. Greta demanded answers, shaking Emma by the shoulders. Who is it? What does it mean? Emma didn't answer. Instead, she turned to the wall and pressed her hand over the center of the map, and whispered he never drowned. It was the first time she spoke of her brother. Not since the accident. Not since the funeral with the empty casket. The journal, resting on her desk, was open. The newest page said, "Echoes don't die. They just stop being invited." Later that night, Greta removed the wallpaper entirely. Beneath the rest of the room's walls were more sketches, diagrams of the Richter family's conversations, conversations no one remembered having. A sketch of Greta crying alone at 3:03 a.m. A drawing of Hinrich breaking something in the basement at 3:19. A silhouette at the window at 3:44, labeled Not Us. Emma had cataloged the forgotten, archived the invisible. The Whisper map wasn't just a record. It was a blueprint for unraveling time, grief, and false memory. And beneath it all, in tiny scrawl near the floorboard, the house doesn't listen anymore, but it remembers everything. May 1st, sunrise came late. Not by the clock, by the light. Greta rose early, as always, but the sun hesitated. The sky glowed gray-blue for 40 minutes before the first beam pierced the horizon. That morning, Emma wouldn't open her eyes. Not from sleep, from refusal. She sat upright in her chair, facing the covered mirror in her room. Wrapped in wool, arms tucked tight, eyelids clenched. Greta begged her, pleaded, screamed. Emma only said one sentence. They aren't mine anymore. She didn't mean her thoughts or her actions. She meant her eyes. Greta, heart clutched in panic, inspected them. The irises were different again, no longer black, but swirling with rings of gold and violet, like ink dropped in still water. And when Emma finally did look in the mirror, she screamed. But the scream didn't sound like her. It was deeper, thicker, male, a borrowed scream. The mirror cracked. That's when Greta found the new drawing, sketched hastily in the notebook with something darker than ink. A pair of eyes, but not human, pupilless, wide, symmetrical in the wrong way. They stared out from the page, as if through it. And beneath the image was one word, scrawled as though in fury, tenant. Emma refused to eat for 3 days. On the 4th, she whispered, he looks through when I sleep. He borrowed them while I dreamed. Greta tried to tell herself it was madness. Just a child unraveling under grief. But the truth clawed behind her ribs like a ticking thing. Emma no longer blinked like before. Not randomly, not reflexively. Every blink was measured, timed, like someone else was deciding when to see. That evening, Greta caught her daughter standing perfectly still in the hallway, staring into the darkened glass of the grandfather clock. Unmoving, mouthing something silently. Greta leaned in, lips trembled. Emma whispered, he lives in the reflective, where light bends wrong. Greta covered every mirror in the house that night, even the spoons, even the polished wood of the piano. But it was too late. The notebook now had a page torn out. Just one, and under Emma's bed, she found the missing sheet, carefully folded. On it, a message. These eyes saw what they shouldn't. I'll need new ones soon. The handwriting wasn't Emma's. It wasn't anyone's. By May 3rd, the walls had begun to move. It wasn't dramatic, not at first. Just a slight shift in shadow, a warped reflection in the glass. But Greta noticed it. The geometry of the guest room was wrong. It tilted, not the floor, not the ceiling, the space. She dropped a marble in the doorway. It rolled, not toward gravity, but into the back right corner. And when it reached the wall, it didn't stop. It vanished. Emma saw it too. She stood in the doorway and said flatly, there's no corner anymore. Greta tried to dismiss it, said it was mold or expansion or something with the foundation. But Emma shook her head and pointed to her notebook, open to a fresh diagram. The guest room's shape redrawn. Not square, not rectangular, but pentagonal, then hexagonal, then a spiral. Each sketch was more chaotic than the last, and at the center of them all was a black dot. No label, just a dot. Emma tapped it. It listens from there. That night, Greta set up chairs in the room, one in each corner. But when she returned, there were only 3. The 4th chair was missing. Gone. No sound. No movement. Just absence. She pulled Emma away and locked the door. Emma didn't resist. She only whispered, almost lovingly. It fed again. Greta barely slept. She dreamed of doors that opened onto corridors too long for the house, of clocks that ran backwards, of footsteps that made no sound, only pressure. By morning, she found the guest room door ajar. Inside, a single piece of chalk on the floor, and on the wall, new writing, fresh, as if drawn while they slept. Corners were made to hide. We don't build them anymore. Beneath the writing, 3 perfect handprints, too large to be Emma's, too small to be Greta's, pressed upside down. She called the priest the next day, but when he entered the house, he stumbled, knees buckling, hand clutching his cross. His nose bled within minutes. He never made it to the guest room. Later, Greta asked Emma if the room was haunted. Emma shook her head, eyes dull, distant. "No," she said. "It's just hollow now. And things echo different when space forgets how to stop." She looked back at the door and added quietly, "It's not a room anymore. It's an opening." May 6th, 1873. The photograph arrived without warning. No return address. No letter. Just a sealed envelope placed on the Richter doorstep before dawn. Inside, a sepia-toned image. A family of 4. But not the Richters. Not exactly. It was their house. Unmistakably. The ivy on the stone wall. The crooked lantern. Even the cracked third shutter on the left window. But the family posed in front wasn't them. A tall man. A woman with a bonnet. A small boy. And a girl. She looked like Emma. Unnervingly so. Same long hair. Same narrow face. Same eyes before they changed. But the image was old. Not just aged. Ancient. The photograph type didn't match the year. The paper had been folded dozens of times. And in the bottom right corner, in tiny, quivering script, "She always returns." Emma didn't react the way Greta expected. She smiled, as if something had finally clicked. Like she'd been waiting for it. That night, Greta confronted her. "Who is she?" she demanded, holding the photo. "Why do you look like her?" Emma didn't blink. She simply said, "That's not a photo. It's a reminder." Greta's blood turned cold. Of what? Emma's voice was a whisper now, as though reciting something memorized. That not all lives are first, and not all deaths are last. Greta tore open the family photo albums, desperate to disprove it. To show Emma she was new, that she hadn't existed before. But buried in the back, wedged between pages meant for the 1840s, was another image, one Greta had never seen before. Same house, same pose, same girl, this time standing alone. And beneath it, not in her handwriting, not in anyone's they recognized, re-entry confirmed. Cycle 6 begins. Emma began humming that evening. A slow, broken melody. One Greta had heard before, in her dreams, in the wind through the cracked window. A song with no origin. The next morning, Emma drew something in the dirt behind the house. A spiral made of circles. 7 rings, each with a name. Only one was unfilled. The 7th. Greta asked her, trembling, "What's it mean?" Emma answered without hesitation, "One more return." Then I remember everything. She paused, then added, as if confessing, "This time I think I kept too much. That's why the shadows are angry." And from behind the trees, someone watched. May 9th, 1873. It was just past 3 a.m. when the door creaked open. No footsteps on gravel. No knock. No latch. Just open. Greta had bolted it. Chained it. She always did. But the door stood wide as if it had never been locked at all. And there, in the fog, stood a man. Tall. Thin. Wearing a black overcoat too long for his legs. He didn't move. Didn't blink. Just stood there. Eyes reflecting the hallway's oil lamp like a pair of polished coins. Greta froze. Not with fear, with certainty. She knew without knowing. He hadn't come for her. He came for Emma. She stepped between them, hands trembling, voice caught at her throat. "What do you want?" The man tilted his head, slowly, too slowly. Then he smiled. Not a warm smile. Watching. Emma began talking to him in her sleep. Every night at 3 o'clock, without fail. One sentence, always whispered in reverse. "He waits in the spaces where sound used to live." Greta covered the mirror. But every morning, the sheet was gone. Folded. Placed neatly at the foot of Emma's bed. And written across the glass, barely visible under the film. Permission granted. Phase 2. She took Emma and ran that night. But the road bent in ways it never had before. They never reached the edge of town. Because there was no edge anymore. By May 12th, the town had changed. Not visibly. Not in brick or tree or stone. But in memory. Greta stopped a constable near the chapel. "I need help. It's my sister, Emma. Something's wrong with our house." The constable smiled politely. "Which house?" "The Richter house." He blinked. Confused. "Don't think I know it. It's on Hollow Bend Lane." Now his smile faded. slowly, like a wick drowning in wax. Hollow bin burned down, he muttered. 12 years ago. No, Greta said, shaking. We live there. The man looked her over and stepped back, as if he'd just seen something he shouldn't. When she returned to the post office, her name was no longer on file. No Richter. No Emma. Not in the census. Not in the church records. Not in the birth logs. Greta's hand shook as she unfolded an old town map. Where Hollow Bin Lane had been, now sat a blank space. Just labeled. And used. She ran to the grocer's. Old Mr. Callahan had known her since childhood. But when she greeted him, he frowned. You from out of town? Greta stared. Mr. Callahan. It's me, Greta Richter. He backed away like she'd said something profane. I knew a Greta once, he said slowly, almost to himself. She was sweet, wore ribbons, but she died. Long ago. No, she cried. That's not true. He only muttered, some come back wrong. Greta stumbled out, tears blinding her. When she reached home, Emma was sitting on the floor, her fingers pressed into her temples. She looked up, eyes wide. They're forgetting me, she whispered. No, yes, Emma said, cutting her off. Even the house. This place doesn't know me anymore. Greta looked around. The walls had changed. What used to be wallpaper was now wood. The staircase curved where it once rose straight. The windows no longer showed the orchard, just mist. Where's the town? Greta whispered. Emma said nothing. She held up a small silver locket Greta didn't recognize. Inside, 2 names scratched in jagged lettering. Emma. Phase 3. No dates. No photos. Just the words. Greta didn't ask where she got it. She already knew. And outside, the road began to loop. People passed, but no one looked. No one saw. They were still in the town. But the town was no longer in them. And somewhere, buried beneath memory and dirt, Emma's name was being dug out again. May 14th, 1873. Greta broke into DR. Amsel's home just after midnight. She didn't knock. Didn't hesitate. She knew he was hiding something. The man who had once sworn to protect her sister now wouldn't even say her name in public. And that was louder than any diagnosis. She found his study seal behind 2 locks and a shelf pushed awkwardly against the door, as if even he was afraid of what he had written. Inside, a ledger. No title, no date, just a symbol on the cover, a spiral inside a human eye. Greta opened it with shaking hands. The first page was blank. The second held a question written in blood-red ink. How many lives can one mind survive before it begins to rot? She turned the pages slowly. Case studies, drawings, dissections, all of them about her, but not always named Emma. Some were ER, some were subject. 1 entry read, cycle 4, regression evident. Memories bleeding into motor functions. Patient recites unknown languages in sleep. And then, an entry dated March 3rd, 1873. Subject initiated phase 1 earlier than expected. Verbal patterns fractured. Sleepwalking returns. She asked about the house that burned, though no prompt was given. Insists she remembers falling, but not all the way. Refuses food on alternating days. Reports hearing instructions from mirrors and standing water. When shown photo of prior subjects, she identified all 6. She should not have. Greta's pulse pounded. She turned another page. There, a sketch. Emma, or someone who looked exactly like her, but drawn in 6 different decades. 1873, 1842, 1801, 1766, 1710, and one with no date at all, just labeled, Original Manifestation. Beneath the sketches scribbled in desperation. She retains structure. But something rides within her. Memory is not memory. It's storage. Each cycle builds. And when the vessel is full, the rest begins to leak. Greta flipped to the last page. Only 2 words scrawled in a violent, broken hand. Phase 4. And beside it, a pressed flower. Black. Brittle. One that no longer grows anywhere in their time. That night, when Greta returned to the house, Emma stood in the garden barefoot, planting that flower back into the soil. It should have crumbled, but instead, it bloomed. The next night, Greta did what no sane person would do. She returned to the old sanitarium. It had been condemned for years, windows broken, vines clawing through stone, roof caved like a rib cage, punctured from inside. But something in the ledger pointed her there. A scribbled phrase in the margin of Emma's file, secondary notes stored off-site. You are warned not to bind memory near origin chamber. A.R. Anna Richter, their grandmother, the one who vanished in 1811. The sanitarium's west wing had collapsed long ago, but the cellar remained intact. Greta found the door chained shut, a rusted plaque overhead reading, Observation Vault, Sublevel Theta. She pried it open. Inside, pitch black, stale air, and shells covered in sheets. She pulled the cloth from one. Not books, not tools, jars, each sealed, numbered, floating inside, small strips of what looked like brain matter. And every one was labeled with names. Richter, Richter, Richter. Then one jar stopped her cold. Inside was a folded piece of skin, tanned and preserved like parchment. Etched on it in tiny, perfect script. Thoughts decay slower in muscle than in memory. She stumbled back, then noticed something else. A small chest tucked beneath a rusted gurney. Inside, a red leather-bound ledger. Not Amsel's, someone else's. Anna's. First page, a quote. Memory isn't owned. It's rented by the soul until the debt is paid. The book catalogued subjects. Procedures. A different tone. Less medical. More ritual. She read on. She returns with new eyes each time. But they always search for the same thing. The door. The man who doesn't knock. The mirror that reflects hunger. And the sister who always remembers. Greta dropped the book. She wasn't a doctor. She wasn't a rescuer. She was a constant. The anchor. The one chosen to hold the loop in place. Every cycle. Every generation. One Richter remembers. One Richter forgets. One asks. One answers. And the man in black? He's not an intruder. He's the collector. The one who reboots the lease when memory starts to rot. Greta turned to leave, but stopped. Because on the back of the vault door, someone had carved. Phase 5 begins when she learns to forget you. And back home, as Greta arrived, she saw Emma, sitting on the steps, eyes blank, holding a small mirror, and whispering, "Who are you again?" May 17th, 1873. The storm came without wind. Rain fell upward. Trees stood still, their branches locked in place like bones resisting movement. The sky was red at the edges, purple in the center, like a bruise about to speak. Inside the house, Emma stared at the mirror for hours. Didn't blink. Didn't sleep. When Greta tried to take it, Emma whispered, "He's in here." Greta froze. "Who?" Emma just smiled. Not Emma's smile. The smile of a stranger wearing her face. Greta backed away. The house creaked. Not like old timber, but like teeth. Grinding. Every room had shifted again. The doors no longer led where they should. The kitchen opened into the same room 3 times in a row. The upstairs hall had stretched. Now 15 steps longer than it was yesterday. And in the attic, the old family portraits were gone, replaced by one painting. A woman in a black dress, seated in a chair made of bones. No eyes, just hollow sockets that leaked ash. Greta turned away, heart racing. She found Emma kneeling on the cellar floor, carving something into the stone with her fingernail. Symbols, circles within circles, spirals, a pattern that made Greta's stomach twist just to see it. Emma looked up. "Do you hear the static?" she asked calmly. "There's no sound." "Exactly," Emma whispered. "That's how you know it started." Greta didn't understand until she picked up the old ledger again. On the last page, something new had appeared. A message in fresh ink. Severing initiated. Anchor destabilized. Emotional tether corrupted. And then, the anchor must forget or the memory cannot evolve. Greta screamed and threw the book. But it didn't hit the wall. It vanished midair, like it had reached the edge of reality. She ran to Emma, grabbed her shoulders. "Look at me. You're my sister. You remember that." Emma blinked, then tilted her head. "What's a sister?" In that moment, Greta felt it. A tearing. Not in her body. Not in her mind. In her role. The cycle had moved past her. She had become irrelevant. That night, the mirror cracked. But not from force. From inside. And in its shards, Greta didn't see her face. She saw all of them. Every Emma. Every cycle. Every ending that was never truly an end. And outside the door, footsteps approached. Not walking. Drifting. The collector had returned. And this time, he wasn't asking permission to enter.
There's a lie you've been living. And it started the moment you were born. Not in your choices. Not in your actions. But in your thoughts. You were handed a script. Memorize this. Believe this. Fear this. They whispered it to you in school. Numbed you with it in the media. And masked it with normal. But what if I told you? Your entire belief system is a blueprint for failure. What if I told you? You've been thinking wrong your entire life, and every moment of pain, of lack, of regret, was not a curse. It was a consequence of the wrong thoughts, wrong energy, and a wrong identity they installed inside you like a virus. Now, you either wake up, or they win. They didn't just lie to you, they wired you. Like a machine. Like a lab rat in a maze that only leads to loops. They programmed your self-worth to depend on external validation. Grades. Applause. Approval. Likes. But real success. Real power. That doesn't live outside of you. It never has. You've been trained to ask for permission. To wait for signs. To doubt your own voice. Every time you had an instinct to rise, they taught you to sit down. Every time your soul whispered, "Go," the world shouted back, "No," you obeyed. And that obedience became your cage. This is dark psychology at work. Subtle. Systematic. And devastating. They installed fear as your compass, so every decision you make feels safe, but dead. Every dream you bury feels normal, but wrong. You keep waking up in a life you don't even remember choosing. Because you didn't choose it. They chose for you. Now ask yourself, who benefits from your self-doubt? Who wins when you keep second-guessing your every move? Who profits when you stay small, silent, and stuck? This is not just about mindset. This is about mental slavery disguised as stability. You were trained to survive, not to thrive. But thriving is your natural state, when you remember who you were before the world told you who to be. It's time to deprogram. Time to kill the old script. Time to rewrite the thoughts that have been slowly killing your potential. Comment below, I destroy every thought that was never mine. Say it loud. Say it twice. Let the algorithm know you're not asleep. And listen, Denzel Washington once said, don't just aspire to make a living. Aspire to make a difference. But you can't make a difference if you're still thinking like a prisoner. You've got to walk out of the mental trap before you ever see the door open in real life. You don't need permission. You need decision. Here's the truth no one wants to hear, you built this prison. Brick by brick. Thought by thought. Excuse by excuse. And I know that's hard to swallow. Because it's easier to blame the world. Your past. Your parents. The system. The pain. But the minute you take full ownership, everything changes. That's what Denzel meant when he said, ease is a greater threat to progress than hardship. It's not the pain that keeps you trapped. It's the comfort of blaming something else. Dark psychology says, if a lie is repeated enough, the mind accepts it as truth. And the biggest lie you accepted? That your limits were real. That your power had a cap. That your life had already been decided by things outside of you. But no. You've been the architect of your own reality. You've just been designing it using broken tools and borrowed beliefs. They told you money is evil, so you stayed broke. They told you success is selfish, so you stayed invisible. They told you humility means silence, so you never roared. And every time you tried to break free, the fear they planted in you pulled you back. But what if you believed something new? That every thought is a seed. That every emotion is energy. That every belief is a spell you're casting over your life. You've been under someone else's spell. But now, it's time to wake up and become the spellcaster. Comment below right now, I no longer obey the thoughts that betray me. Say it again, loud. Let that vibration break something inside you. This isn't about motivation. This is about liberation. You want to fix your life? Then first, fix the way you think. Everything is energy. Every thought you think. Every word you say. Every emotion you refuse to deal with, it all carries a frequency. And here's the part they never taught you in school. You've been using that energy against yourself. Not by accident. But by habit. You say you want success, but your thoughts are coated in fear. You say you want love, but your energy screams, I'm not enough. You say you want peace, but your mind keeps playing reruns of every betrayal, every failure, every fear. You attract what you are. Not what you want. The law of attraction isn't magic, it's mathematics. If you keep thinking the same thoughts, you will keep attracting the same results. Every time you repeat, I can't, the universe says, understood. Every time you say, I'm tired, your body listens. Your soul listens. The world responds. You are not unlucky. You're unaligned. You've been tuned to the wrong frequency for so long, you started calling it your personality. But Denzel said it clearly, you attract not just what you want, but what you are prepared to handle. So the question is, are you prepared to handle greatness? Or are you still rehearsing failure? You are a walking magnet. Every cell in your body responds to your thoughts. Your mind is a transmitter. And every time you think, you are sending out a signal that creates your future. Stop attracting pain by obsessing over your past. Stop attracting scarcity by fearing money. Stop attracting betrayal by expecting it in everyone you meet. Fix your energy. Or be destroyed by it, they trained you. Not just to doubt yourself, but to hate your own potential. Understand this, you weren't just lied to. You were weaponized against yourself. They made sure the moment you felt ambition, you'd call it greed. The moment you saw your beauty, you'd call it vanity. The moment you glimpsed your power, you'd feel guilt. This is dark psychology at its finest. They didn't need chains to keep you in place. They just needed shame. Because shame is a stronger prison than steel. They programmed you to attack your gifts before anyone else could. That's why you downplay your talents. That's why you laugh when you speak your goals out loud. That's why you feel guilty when you even consider winning. Because you were raised to believe that your greatness made others uncomfortable. So you buried it. Again and again. Until the real you was 6 feet under, and only the version they approved remained. But guess what? They lied. You were never too much. They were just too small. You were never selfish. You were just finally prioritizing your purpose. And they couldn't stand it. Denzel Washington once said, you pray for rain, you gotta deal with the mud too. You want power? Then prepare to be misunderstood. Prepare to be doubted. Prepare to walk alone, until your power is undeniable. Stop apologizing for your fire. Start making the world adjust to your heat. Your potential was never the problem. Their fear of it was, they don't teach this in school. They don't show you this in the movies. But Denzel Washington does. He said it plainly, fall forward. Not backward. Not safely. Not politely. Fall forward. Even if it hurts. Especially when it hurts. Because pain isn't punishment. It's proof. Proof that you were trying. Proof that you were alive. Proof that you still had fight left in you. But you were taught to retreat the moment things got hard. The moment you stumbled, they told you it was failure. That you should go back, lower your aim, shrink your dream. But that's the opposite of what you need. You don't shrink after pain. You sharpen. When Denzel failed his first audition, he didn't quit. He didn't blame the room. He didn't delete the dream. He got better. Louder. Clearer. He understood something most people never do: rejection is not the end. It's redirection. The people who laugh at your vision now, they'll watch from the crowd later. But only if you keep going. Only if you keep showing up, wounded, scarred, unsure, but unshaken. Pain is a signal. Not to stop. But to upgrade. The moment you hit resistance is the moment most people quit. But not you. Not anymore. Because now you know the truth: your thinking is what determines if pain breaks you or builds you. So change your interpretation, and you change your outcome. Fall forward. Crawl forward. Bleed forward if you have to, but never go back. You fix your life by fixing your response. Not by begging for an easier path. You want to know the truth. The people at the top. The ones you admire. They think like builders. Designers. Commanders. You feel guilt when you say no. They feel power when they say it. You seek peace in comfort. They seek power in discomfort. You break down under pressure. They become pressure. This is what Denzel meant when he said, without commitment, you'll never start. But more importantly, without consistency, you'll never finish. Consistency isn't an emotion. It's a decision. It's brushing your teeth even when no one's watching. It's doing the work even when you're tired. It's choosing discipline over dopamine. Every single time. So let me ask you something. Are you still thinking like the broke? The wounded? The abandoned? Or are you ready to flip the script and think like the elite? Because you don't rise to your goals. You fall to your standards. And right now, your standards are scripting your future. The question is, who wrote those standards? You. Or the ones who never wanted to see you win? This isn't about becoming someone else. It's about returning to who you were before the world broke your lens. It's about unlearning weakness. Rewiring fear. And thinking like a weapon. You've been thinking like a victim your whole life. It's not your fault. But it is your responsibility to stop. This is the moment. Right now. Comment below again: I am no longer hypnotized by weakness. I think like a weapon now. Say it and mean it. Say it and become it. Because thinking isn't passive. It's warfare. And from this point forward, you don't fight fair. Look in the mirror. Not the one on your wall. The one inside your mind. The one you avoid every time you distract yourself with scrolling, noise, validation, fake smiles, or fake strength. Because when it's quiet, when the world shuts up, you hear it. That voice. The one that says, this isn't who I'm supposed to be. And you're right. The mirror doesn't lie. But you've been lying to yourself. Telling yourself you're tired, when really, you're unaligned. Saying you're confused, when really, you're just scared to commit. Saying you're stuck, when truth is, you're not stuck. You're undisciplined. The mirror isn't your enemy. It's your blueprint. It shows you everything you fear. Everything you pretend doesn't matter. And everything that will haunt you if you don't face it. You think transformation is about hustle? Grind? Money? No. It's about honesty. And most people can't handle honesty because it demands action. Denzel once said, dreams without goals remain dreams. And ultimately fuel disappointment. You know what that means. If your reflection doesn't scare you a little, you're not dreaming big enough. You're not reaching deep enough. You're not even in the arena. You're in the audience, watching other people live your life. But the mirror is different for those who are ready. It becomes a weapon. A place where old versions of you are hunted. Where lies are executed. Where weakness is exposed. And where truth stands naked, unshaken, waiting for you to stop pretending. You want to fix your life? Start in the mirror. And I don't mean affirmations. I mean confrontations. Who are you really? Who are you when the lights are off and the applause is gone? Who are you when no one's checking your story, when no one's clapping, when it's just you and your choices? That's who you are. And if that version of you is weak, if it's full of excuses, if it's living on autopilot, then your future is being assassinated by your present. You want to win. Kill the imposter. Face the mirror every day like it's the battlefield. Because it is. There's something you need to understand right now. And it's going to hurt. You cannot take the old you into the new life. It's not allowed. The weight is too heavy. The patterns are too toxic. The fear is too loud. If you try to carry the past into your future, it'll collapse on you. And not quietly. You'll lose opportunities. You'll sabotage relationships. You'll keep repeating the same hell, convincing yourself that life is unfair, when the truth is, you didn't do what was required. Let me make it simple, the old you has to die. The version of you that needs motivation to act. Kill it. The version of you that chases comfort, validation, distraction. Bury it. The version of you that doubts, delays, and overthinks until everything's gone. Burn it to ash. You don't improve your life by tweaking the settings. You reinvent by burning the whole thing down. This is what Denzel means when he talks about commitment. He doesn't mean try harder. He means become someone new. You are not rebuilding. You are rebirthing. That means discomfort. That means loss. That means rage. And that means freedom. You can't be born again unless something inside you dies. That's spiritual law. That's dark psychology. That's the price of transformation. You want to be extraordinary? Then be willing to go where most people won't, into your own darkness. Into your addictions. Your failures. Your secrets. Not to stay there, but to burn the bridge back. Your thoughts. Not just ideas. They're identities. And you've got identities inside you that are suffocating everything you're meant to become. People will say, you've changed. Good. They should say that. Because if they don't, you haven't evolved. You've just been rearranging your fear. Kill the old self. Or be destroyed by it. There is no middle. No compromise. No escape. You're not here to survive. You're here to resurrect, this is it. No more rewinds. No more excuses. No more waiting for the right moment, the right people, the right feeling. Because the truth is, there is no right time. There is only now. And you're running out of it. You've been thinking wrong all your life. And you know it. You felt it in your gut since you were a kid. That itch. That ache. That sense that you were made for something bigger. But then. They got to you. They filled you with doubt. They turned your questions into compliance. Your voice into silence. Your dreams into delays. And now here you are, waking up in a life that feels borrowed. Empty. Stuck. But there's still time. You can still flip the entire script. But only if you move now. Not later. Not tomorrow. Now. You've been hypnotized by your past. But the spell breaks the moment you decide to change the story. The moment you stop negotiating with fear. The moment you stop letting your thoughts run wild like untrained dogs. You bring them to heel. You tell your mind what to think. You control the narrative. That's the game. This is the mindset of the greats. This is what Denzel Washington lives. He doesn't wait. He doesn't hope. He commands. Command your thoughts. Command your habits. Command your future. This is your life. This is your moment. You either fix it now, or die the same. And if you don't choose, the world will choose for you. It'll put you in a box. Bury your dreams with polite language and daily routine. And no one will remember who you could have been. Not even you. You've already wasted enough time thinking wrong. Now you rise. Say it with me, I fix my mind, and I fix my fate. Drop it in the comments one last time. Let it echo. Let it seal something in you. Because if this is the video that wakes you up, then never sleep on yourself again. You weren't born broken. You were born blindfolded. Now rip it off. And become the weapon you were born to be.